Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our virtual cultural exchange between Morocco and Gibraltar. This event is organized jointly by the Gibraltar Morocco Business Association and the Straits of Gibraltar Association, of which Mr. Brahim Krikas is president. I am Henry Sacramento, your host this evening. Today, we feature an athlete from Gibraltar. Before I introduce him, let us see some footage of his achievements so far. And I would like to credit Mr. Abdelhani Koukus for the editing and putting that video together of all your photographs, and remind our viewers from wherever it is that you're joining us that you can put questions to our guest this evening. But let me introduce him. He worked as a custom officer in Gibraltar for 38 years. His main involvement in sport was through water polo. Initially through Tariq Water Polo team in Gibraltar, and then 10 years at Club Water Polo Algeciras. First year as a player and then as a coach. He was also one of the founder members of Bluefin Open Water Club. In 2010, Mr. Keith Rapley and himself swam the Straits of Gibraltar from Tarifa to Morocco, the first Gibraltarians to complete it in a swimsuit and not with the aid of a neoprene suit. About 18 months ago, he was asked to join and help the Gibraltar Cycling Association. It is with this in mind that he contacted the Straits of Gibraltar Association to see whether they can compete in cycling events in Morocco, in order to develop the standards of cycling in Gibraltar. Morocco has always welcomed cyclists in the past, and he hopes that they can continue this in the future. Good evening and welcome, Chris Nuñez.
Good evening, Henry. Good evening to you all.
Hi, Chris. Let me say what a pleasure to have you with us. And can I ask you to share with us, how did it all begin? How did you become an athlete? What inspired you to?
Well, let me start by saying that I have more, the word athlete makes me sound better than what I am. I've taken part in a lot of sports, but I never really thought that I've been that good. I've been a better coach than a player in everything that I've done, mainly because in sports you need to have the right body build, and I've always been a very big person. I carry a lot of weight, and a lot of the sports that I've taken part, it's been difficult to develop myself anymore because of that. but that's the way it is. And I've always enjoyed sport. How it all began? Well, politics made everybody in Gibraltar want to take up sports. There was nothing else to do. Closed frontier, and all we did during the weekends was play sports, whether it was hockey,
Sorry, Chris,
football.
for those of us that have tuned in and are not familiar with the history in Gibraltar, you've actually gone back to the late 60s, early 70s, when the border with Gibraltar and Spain was shut.
Yeah, absolutely. The border closed in '69, and all of us of that generation. I was born in 1964, so I grew up with a closed frontier. You were slightly older. I always remember
Like
you
I
as a
did, yeah.
man. Yeah,
Well,
more than I.
just 4 years older than you.
Yeah, but when when you're young, you look at older, even if it's only 4 years, and you think
Yeah.
they're way older. I'm sorry to say that,
No,
Henry.
no. I totally understand. I totally
Don't take
understand.
it personally.
No, not at all.
So what did we do? You either joined the Boy Scouts, you played sports, and we had probably per capita more association and sporting events than any country in the world, and more
Yes, we
clubs
did.
for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, it's quite sadly, after the frontier opened, a lot of clubs have gone away. They've lost interest. People lost interest in belonging to clubs because there were other things to do in more modern times in Gibraltar. So what did we do? We played 3 or 4 sports a week, and you spend all week looking forward to the weekend, and you carried one injury from one sport to another, and that's how you spend your youth in Gibraltar.
Because we have to say that in those days, none of the football pitches or any of the pitches had grass. It was all either tarmac
No,
or, if we're going to talk about naval grounds number 1 and 2, it was, I mean, if you fell, you had it.
I that was the biggest dread. How far you wanted to tackle anybody, and if you committed yourself, you ended up in hospital with blood all over your legs or arms or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I
another thing
remember the days.
yeah, it wasn't good. And another
Fun.
thing that I forgot to tell you about, Henry, whilst we've been chatting, is that I actually played in the band for the Boy Scouts, and I took part in for 2 years in. We used to get invited to Tangiers to play for the King's birthday parade.
That's right. I
I
remember
remember
those
going
days.
to the Hotel Cella, the Scheherazade Hotel. I remember we stayed there as well, and we used to go with the Gibraltar Regiment band. I believe it was the resident British battalion at the time also used to go, the Sea Scouts, and my band, which was the First Fourth band. And we used to have it was an adventure for us. It was going out
Well,
as kids.
we have to tell again our listeners that may not be familiar with history is that we used to have a daily link between Tangier and Gibraltar with a ferry called the Mons Calpe.
The
That
brilliant ferry. It was the greatest
whatever
ferry ever.
whatever the weather was, you were always guaranteed that it left on time and it got back on time. You know, it was
It was
amazing.
brilliant. It was
Yeah.
incredible. For me, that just a day trip. That was a very popular thing to do at the time, was to go for day trips to Tangiers.
Yeah.
And just coming back in the evening and having spent the day in Tangiers was amazing.
I remember
And
the police football team would come and play the police in Tangier.
really,
Yeah, in those days. You see?
and obviously we all holidayed with the closed frontier. We holidayed. I remember staying in the Hotel Pasadena.
That's right.
The
Which
Pasadena Hotel was very popular with Gibraltarians. They had a fantastic pool. We weren't used to having pools.
yes.
So when we went to Tangiers, to the Pasadena Hotel, every single day for about 5 hours, we were inside the
In the
pool.
pool, yeah, opposite the bull ring, and it was
I kind of remember.
yeah. I stayed quite a number of times because my first trip in 1974, I was an altar boy at the time, and I accompanied a group that the late Carmen Sherry used to run in Humphreys called the Maria Goretti for underprivileged children. And as an altar boy, some of us that were altar boys were asked to come along as helpers. And I remember distinctly that it was in the middle of the field. There was nothing built around it. I mean, if you were to see it now, if you don't know where it is, you drive past and you wouldn't find it. It's no longer
I was told that
it's
I
no longer a
visited
hotel.
Tangiers 2 years ago. I went with Kenneth Cardona, whom you know well, the association knows well.
That's right.
And I went with him, and he told me the same thing, that I wouldn't recognize whether the Pasadena hotel was. I remember there was a lot of open ground around it. That's all I remember.
Yeah,
But I do remember.
It's all built up now, Chris. We have Mr.
What I
Stephen
remember
Marine.
is that pool. For me, that was the best holiday as a kid ever.
I'll share some photographs with you when we're offline of me in the pool. We have Mr. Stephen Marine saying, "Hi, Chris. Welcome to our cultural exchange." Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us. And we have Patricia Hurado, who says, "Hi, Henry. Hi, Chris."
Hi.
Saad Ben Yaqub, we say, "Hi, Chris," and "Hi, Henry." Oh, thank you very much.
Hello.
Oh, Kylie Garcia says, "Hi, Chris." And,
Hi.
you know, some of the pronunciation
Zainab.
of these names. Zainab Amaitan says, thanks for sharing these historical facts. Oh, pleasure.
Pleasure.
Well, see, I mean, and I'm hoping and fingers crossed that when Morocco opens up again after COVID and we can reestablish links, you know, some of those sporting events that have been happening will continue to happen. But sorry, I interrupted you, Chris. Did you want to add anything else to what you were saying?
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's what we're all hoping for. That we can go back to the past when we used to go to Morocco to participate. I remember watching WAC Casablanca basketball team. They had a very good basketball team that used to come to Gibraltar, the close frontier, to play here in Gibraltar. And I know for a fact that in the 60s, 70s, they used to go to Fez and Meknes to play water polo. The teams from here. They also used to go to Ceuta, but they went to Fez and Meknes to play water polo. And I also know, because of some of the people I know through cycling, is that they used to take part in events, also in cycling events in Morocco, with this gentleman who works for Stagneto, who's now, I believe he's a Gibraltarian now, Dandouche, who I believe is very closely linked with the Tangier Cycling Club.
Mm-hmm. Chris, how difficult or easy was it training combined with your job? Because you were a custom officer for 38 years, and those of us that have worked in essential services work shifts. So how easy or not was it to combine both?
Honestly, now that I am retired, I cannot believe that I had the energy to do everything that I did. And I tell you, I cannot believe that my wife allowed me to spend so much time away, because it was bringing literally working shifts and before, not the new shifts. I find the new shifts just before I left were very easy shifts. The old shifts, the ones you and I worked when we were young, and those were hard shifts. Yeah. We hardly had any time to rest. And doing that, bringing up children and training at the same time was horrible. My children used to wake me up in the park. I'd fall asleep in the park and I'd panic. I'd suddenly wake up and think that somebody had taken them away, and they'd be there playing happily, not realizing that I was asleep. Half of the times anyway.
There's a lot to be said for retirement, no?
Retirement is fantastic. Whoever says it isn't, forget it. It's fantastic.
Please. We have Kevin Salsa joining us. Says, good old days at Morocco when the frontier closed. Good memories. Yeah, they certainly were. Oh, and my better half, Priscilla, thank you for joining us. Very interesting to remember the past. And Alhan Becky Smith says, hi, Henry, and hi, Chris.
Hi.
Looking forward to visiting your shop when I return back to Gibraltar. It's one could.
So it's incredible. And then I took up, when I left Tariq water polo team, I took up a Hesidas water polo team across the bay.
Yeah.
I started as a player, for 1 year, and then I took up the coaching. I ended up 10 years on and off, more on than off. Towards the last years, it was just tiring. I'd had to cross the frontier every day, travel to even the home games, as you may understand, were away games for me. And then the away games, we literally played in Sevilla, Granada, Jaén, Malaga.
Very demanding. Yeah, very demanding.
Yeah, the closest game was about 100 kilometers away. That was the closest. And some of them we were traveling for 2 or 3 hours, because Andalusia is a big area. It's a huge region compared. I had a player in my team from Madrid. He was an excellent player. And he told me that he played the league in Madrid using the underground. He never needed to drive anywhere. And he was shocked when he started playing for us as to the amount of traveling that we had to do.
Yeah.
And it was insane. So I spent 10 wonderful years in Algeciras. They were brilliant. I had opened my eyes. I learned a lot from other coaches, through some coaching courses, through friendship. And I still have that friendship. We still keep in contact. And thankfully, I never had any politics involved for those 10 years. I can say wholeheartedly that it was pure friendship and respect all the time.
Fantastic. Amen to that. Yeah. Chris, I have to ask you, how was the experience of swimming the Straits in swimsuits? I mean, I remember many years ago, the late Horacio Samit, who was a minister at the time, actually swimming from Gibraltar, from Tangier to Gibraltar. But I remember he was protected by this cage with a wooden frame. Because as a child, I remember seeing all this on the GBC News. How much of that did you guys have or not?
No, you don't have any protection. It isn't as bad as it seems. And you go through an association. It's an association that's set up so that you can do the crossing safely, because it basically gets all the permissions, all the certificates that you need. You have to get medical attention. Well, at least have a medical so that they know that you're healthy enough to do it. But at the end of the day, you don't need to go through them to do it. As long as you have the permits from Spain and Morocco, you don't need to go through them. It's a semi-business association. It's a 50-50. They do earn a lot of money because there's about 60 people a year who cross the Straits. The Straits is considered, there are quite a few. It's not fantastic for me to say that I've done it compared to other swims. For example, we have Nathan Bias in Gibraltar, who's one of the quickest ever to cross the Straits, but he's also done it there one way, and he's also done it there and back. Wow. But this is a guy who's done the English Channel, who swam Manhattan. I believe he did Manhattan. The Catalina Straits, I believe he did, he's done 4 or 5 major swims. The Straits of Gibraltar is the smallest, and it's a starting point for people who want to do bigger things. Now, for me, that's the biggest I wanted to do. I don't want to do it again.
You've done it. You've ticked the box, and that's it. I mean,
that's it.
Having crossed the strait on so many occasions on ferries, and you see so many big fish. I mean, do they not come close to you? Do you not feel threatened at any stage?
No. They have. You have 2 vessels with you. One ahead of you, and that is giving you the direction that you need to go because of the currents or the tidal currents that cross the straits.
Right.
And that tells you all the time the direction you need to go. That's about 100 meters or 200 meters ahead of you. And then next to you, you have a small rib in case you need water, in case you need anything. But the more important thing is that they're spotting for anything that could be risky. Right. But rarely do you get anybody coming out of the water because you're at risk. Very rarely. There are people who when they do these things, they write blogs on the internet. These blogs where they narrate or they tell the story of having crossed the straits. And there was this English guy who wrote how as soon as he got into the water in Tarifa, there was a pilot whale that came close to him. He said that his heart rate went through the roof. He was scared.
Wow.
He panicked and all that. But only few minutes later, he started relaxing to a level that he never relaxed before. And the pilot whale accompanied him for most of the swim across. And he said it was the most incredible experience in his life, because his heart rate just went down to a level that he never felt before. Now, crossing the strait, how is it? To be honest, you spend so much time training that you just want to get over and done with. My biggest fear, and that's why I insisted on stating that I did it on a swimsuit, is that the neoprene suit, it's like a diving suit but thinner for swimmers, gives you the security of facing the cold, because there's a layer of protection for the cold. It also makes you swim slightly faster because you glide better. My biggest fear was that the water was going to be too cold, because it's always cold in Gibraltar.
Yes.
And my last swim was on a Thursday before the Saturday swim, and I went in next to my club, which is a Mediterranean rowing club. I went in and it was freezing, and I thought, I'm not going to do it. There's no way I'm going to do it. I'm freezing. But on the day we went there, I went in the water and I thought I was in the hot tub. It was just warm. It was incredibly warm. The difference in water temperature from the Straits to Gibraltar is ridiculous. It was 2 or 3 degrees warmer. So that's why I said the neoprene gives you a peace of mind. And we did it with a swimsuit. And to be honest, I could have taken the swimsuit off. It was that warm.
Just as well you didn't.
No, just as well I didn't. And we had dolphins below us. We had seagulls for I don't know for what apparent reason. Seagulls were diving on us, but it was an incredible experience.
How long did it actually take to do the swim, Chris?
4 hours and 43 minutes.
Okay. And where exactly in Morocco did you land?
We touched rock and went back on we didn't actually land. What you do is you touch land with your hand, which is why I believe one of the images there is when we touch land. And in fact, coincidentally, there was a group of Moroccan men fishing and they started applauding. I thought it was surreal when they started applauding, because I didn't see them, and then I hear clapping, and then they were there clapping at us. It was next to the new Tangier port, to the left-hand side of it. Tangier Med, yeah. It was because we actually had to slow down and let a vessel come through.
Wow.
Because the guy told us to swim faster to go past the vessel, and I said, I'm not going to swim faster. That's it, mate. No, it's just I didn't have the energy. So, because we actually were supposed to do the swim in August, 2nd of August. But there had been a lot of rough weather, and they don't allow you to swim on anything that's stronger than a force 2 or 3. And there were a lot of foreigners who'd taken planes to come over to Spain in order to be able to swim. And the guy whom I knew, the guy who used to run the association, sadly he passed away, asked us, because we are neighbors, he asked us to see whether we could just stay and hold on. But the thing is that in training, you peak. You make it, your mind is set for a certain date, your body is set for a certain date. And after that, it all went a bit downhill.
Yeah,
in fact, it was a bit of an anticlimax. My training went down a little bit. In fact, I was in England with my son, who started uni that year, and I went to help him over. And it was on a Thursday evening and a Wednesday evening that I was called to say that on a Saturday I was going to swim. And you know what pubs are like and bars are like in the UK.
I know.
And there I was on the Wednesday night with my son thinking, there's no way I'm going to finish this on the Saturday. But it went well, and I did it with one of your fellow colleagues, Keith Rapley, fellow policeman, with you.
That's right.
Served a lot of years with you.
That's right.
So it was good.
Cadet as well. Did you do this as a personal challenge to yourselves, or did you do it to raise money for a particular charity?
Well, I'm not a person who likes a limelight or not, even though I'm on here now. But I'm here for other things that we're going to probably talk about now, about cycling. So I didn't publicize it at all. I did a little bit of collection for Rick, research into childhood
Research
cancer.
into childhood cancer, yes.
Yeah. And that year, my mother had died. But I didn't do this because of my mother's death. That was a bad coincidence.
Yeah.
I just did it because I used to swim a lot with Keith. And one day he said, let's swim the Straits. And we did it. That's it. Basically, there's no heroic story behind it other than...
Well,
another friend of mine had asked me about 4 or 5 years ago, shall we do the Straits? And I said, there's no way I'm going to cross the Straits. Mainly because he's a far better swimmer than me. And the effort was going to be too much. You really need to be, if you're going to do it together with another person, you need to be on par with that person.
Yeah, more or less at the same level.
Yeah, because if not, you suffer too much. And Keith was a faster swimmer than me, but we trained a lot together, so we knew more or less how to go together. And he just came up in a conversation, and we did it, and that's it.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations and well done on that achievement. Well, my next question has to be, what has been the most challenging thing that you've dealt with, both
Actually,
sport-wise, or professionally as a custom officer? Just share with us.
Professionally, I like not to talk about my work now that I'm retired, but I did enjoy my work. I never hide behind anything that I've done at work. I enjoyed it. And I did have a few thrills, mainly on the boats, and I'd rather leave it at that.
Yeah,
but I did enjoy it.
Coinciding with you on some frontier duties some years ago, I did a stint of 6 months with Michael Duran, and I remember, good times, very good times.
I've always been very proactive because I thought that if you're going to get old young, it just wasn't me. And I thought that through work, that if I kept myself busy, I liked adventure, I liked feeling scared. And sometimes you felt a little bit scared, you felt the adrenaline and all that. And
the adrenaline rush is priceless. I mean, I also remember when I did custody duty, you coming with some of your clients to be processed.
Yeah. Clients, I actually refer them that way too. It's a very nice way.
Yeah.
The thing is that with our clients, I'm actually friends with a lot of them. Because if you're straightforward with people, on the day, they might not react to you positively. But when they see you in the streets later, they know that if you've been straightforward with them, you haven't cheated in any way, you've been fair. They respect that, and over the years, you actually befriend them. Because
absolutely,
the other problem is that when people are young, they make mistakes, and they realize that they made those mistakes 10 years later, 20 years later. And if you give them good advice when you're dealing with them, on the day they might not accept it. But they will think about it, and even though they don't take it, but they appreciate the fact that you actually spend time giving advice. So absolutely. On that side of work, I've had a few adventures and I've enjoyed them. Sometimes I wish I had bigger adventures. One thing that I've always wanted to be, and I tell my wife, she says it, I would have liked to have been in the riot police or something like that. Seriously, having those bricks being thrown at you, Molotov cocktails, that must have been, the adrenaline on that must be incredible.
I mean, you can always volunteer for recruitment weekends, No.
I only walk dogs and cycle now. But you asked me that the hardest thing that I've ever done sports-wise.
Yeah, the most challenging thing.
The most challenging thing that really hurt me was there's a climb in Spain, in the north of Spain, in Asturias. It's called Langrilu. It's hard, so hard that even the professionals hate it because they hate it. Yeah, they hate it because they've done 200 kilometers a day. They've climbed 2 other mountains and they're racing up those hills. I wasn't racing up. I was just attempting to climb it. And if you can imagine the upper rock, St. Michael's, going to St. Michael's Cave and past St. Michael's to O'Hara, it's that, but for 12 kilometers. And that was, for me, the hardest. I've actually recorded it on a GoPro on the way up. And the things that come out of my mouth whilst climbing it are a bit X-rated, to say the least. It was hard because I weigh so much. I weigh 105 kilos, so for me it was hard.
Maybe we can talk about shedding some of that weight and making your life easier. Have you ever considered taking the challenge of doing Mount Tupkal, which is the highest peak in the Atlas Mountain? I did.
Hiking? Can you
Yeah.
actually cycle that?
No.
No.
It's not safe to cycle. I did it together with 6 colleagues of mine, one of which is now the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Richard Alger.
Right.
We did it about 10 years ago. And yeah, it's quite a trek. But the view from the top is amazing because you can actually see the Sahara dunes, the sand dunes.
Wow. I know that Kenneth Cardona has done it often.
Has done it, yes.
The thing is, I broke my meniscus and my cruciate ligaments when I was 24, playing five-a-side football.
Right.
And I always fear doing very long treks because of my knee. I protected a lot. So cycling and swimming were good for my knee.
Yeah.
Other things I tend to avoid. So, and listen, if you put in more stuff than I do now, I don't have enough hours of the day. So right now,
don't you ask yourself now how you ever had time to work, Chris?
I'm glad of one thing, and I think it's very important that even whilst you're working, and I've always been one that respected that I had to work and they are getting paid, you had to work, but it's very important to have a life outside work. Very, very important. Especially now, when you retire, you realize that the transition from working to not working isn't that big because you spend a lot of your time doing something else other than work. I find some people, unfortunately, retire and you see them wandering about Main Street having coffees. I don't blame them for doing that, but not me. I have actually told my children to shoot me if they see me doing that.
Not literally, I suppose.
No, well, no.
Chris, we have a question from our president, Mr. Brahim Krikasa, says, "Hi, Henry and Chris. Welcome to our 9th cultural exchange. We are so excited and happy meet our guests and get to know more about cycling sports across Gibraltar and the Kingdom of Morocco through our guest experiences. My questions to our dear guest is, what do you love so much about Morocco for bike touring? Was language ever a problem?"
Well, unfortunately, Ibrahim, I never toured Morocco on a bicycle. I've never had. I had a lot of friends who have, but I can tell you what's not to want to do it. It's a challenge. Anything is a challenge. Personally, I'm tired of seeing the same roads that I cycle in every day, and anything that's new is welcome. Now, the language barrier in Morocco, there isn't. The Moroccans are the greatest linguists on earth. Everybody knows 3 languages, at least. If not, I've had experiences in the past, especially through work, I've spoken to some Moroccans whose knowledge of 5 or 6 languages is amazing. So I don't think language is an issue at all. Especially because we know Spanish as well. I speak a bit of French as well. So, and I know some major words in Moroccan, which is food, hodra, makla. So
I think also one very important thing to add, Chris, is that I always say the word hospitality was invented in Morocco. You have not experienced real hospitality if you haven't been to Morocco. Let me throw my next question at you, and that is, how would you like to see cycling progress in Gibraltar, Chris?
Well, I'll give you cycling in Gibraltar will be, unfortunately, because of the congestion in Gibraltar, there's too much traffic. There are very few cycling lanes in Gibraltar. And it's very difficult to organize any cycling event in Gibraltar safely. And not only safely, but in a way that doesn't affect thousands of people. Because Gibraltar is so small, that we have so many housing estates on all our roads, that if I close one road, even for 2 hours, the number of complaints by people is huge. And unless you hold an event at 3 o'clock in the morning, During the daytime, it's very, very difficult. So how do I want to develop cycling in Gibraltar? In two ways. The social side, we are trying our best to get the government to improve our roads for safer cycling. We have Vanessa Byrne from O2 magazine, who's doing great work, and we are helping her, because we can't say that we're doing it in a joint way, because she's taken the brunt of the effort, and we're helping her to promote through her magazine safer cycling. On the 5th of June, we're holding a cycle to celebrate World Cycling Day. World Bicycle Day is actually on the 3rd of June, but it's a Thursday. So on the 5th of June, we're holding basically we're hoping that families come along on bicycles, and we are going to spend about 45 minutes cycling around Gibraltar, going to a beach, Sandy Bay Beach, having a swim, having something to eat. And I believe the Chief Minister and the Minister for Transport, Mr. Dagliani, I believe both are attending. I believe Mr. Picardo will attend with his e-bike. He has a mountain bike.
So
and I believe he'll attend.
Anyone, Chris, listening to this and wants to attend, where do they have to turn up? What time on Saturday, the 5th of June?
Casemates at 10:30 in the morning. And we'll depart from Casemates at 11.
Is there a fee to pay to join? Is it free of charge?
No. The cycle is free of charge. Depends on the energy you have. But the meals, obviously, you'll have to pay. It's coconut bar at Sandy Bay. There's a set menu for £15 if you want to attend. So that's one side of the cycling that we want to develop, and trying to involve ourselves a little bit more. Like I said, with O2 magazine, Simon Headley from e-bike shop at Ocean Village as well is very much involved in safe cycling and promoting safer cycling. We are just hoping that we could get cycling lanes, which I understand is a very difficult thing in Gibraltar. Anyway.
How realistic is it, knowing the infrastructure and the limitations of space in Gibraltar, to actually demand or ask for cycling lanes?
Well, there are a lot of new developments going around, Henry. And there are a lot of new developments with 10 meters of pavements. Unnecessary. We could have 9 meters of pavement and 1 meter of cycling lane. You don't need more than a meter on either side. And it's horrendous to see. And for me, it's a bit difficult to understand. To understand why that isn't incorporated from day one. We have new developments that are going to take place very soon around the old Rook area, around the old schools here, Governor's Meadow School, etc. Why not incorporate into the plans now before they start building?
I think, Chris, it's a question of awareness and creating awareness. I remember the Gibraltar, where there were no paved pavements, and wheelchair users and mothers with prams used to have to come off a step. Thankfully, through awareness and making noise, eventually all pavements were changed. I think it takes time, and it takes a bit of a campaigning. We have Abbas from Tangier saying, Mr. Chris, when is the ideal time to ride this route in terms of weather? What didn't you like about Morocco? Is it possible to ride through Morocco without a tent?
Well, first and foremost, there's nothing I don't like about Morocco. That's so let's get that one out of the way. Morocco, I've always had a good experience there.
Ticks all the boxes.
Ticks all the boxes. So that's out of the way. Second, like I said before, maybe he didn't hear me, but I've never actually cycled through Morocco. So I can't really give you much experience on that, other than to say that obviously it's a very hot country, and I would be very wary of going inland. I would do coastal rides when it's hot and drink as much as water as possible. And I would certainly avoid going inland, not in the summer anyway. We know how hot it can get, and it's dangerous.
Possibly spring would be the ideal weather all around.
Nowadays with the technology and Google Weather, you can check when it's the rainier season, when it's a drier season, when it's a warmer season. So obviously try and choose the drier season, and try and choose at least not when it's cold, but when it's cooler, because it is dangerous. Cycling in hot weather, even though you're used to it, you're never quite used to it. Coming back to the other question, would I like to see cycling develop in Gibraltar? Well, I'll give you a comparison with Slovenian cycling.
that was going to be my next question. You know, how well are Slovenian cyclists doing?
Well, whoever follows international sports will know that Roglic and Pogačar, winners of the Tour de France last year and the Vuelta de España last year, are from Slovenia. And somebody says, wow, they must be doing things really well in Slovenia. And they interviewed this guy, Pogačar, who's an incredible cyclist. And they said, how well is the Slovenian Cycling Association doing for you? And he said, no, they're not doing well at all. The only reason they're doing so well is because they live next to Italy. And in Italy, they hold competitions so often that these guys can compete on a regular basis. Wow. So that is my comparison to what I would like with possible competition in Morocco. How do I see our cycling developing? It would develop in Morocco. Currently, cyclists in Gibraltar participate in two major events. One is the Commonwealth Games, the other one is the Island Games. In between, they hardly compete at all. Not because they don't want to, but because it's difficult. Because if they compete in neighboring Spain, sometimes they ask you to compete only if you belong to their association or federation. And you can only do so if you're resident in the country. So obviously we are not resident in the country, so it's very difficult to get a license to compete in Spain. I know already, initial contacts we've had, thankfully through Mr. Ibrahim, is that that they will allow us to race with international licenses in Morocco. Those are called UCI, which is a governing body, UCI, the international governing body licenses that we can grant as an association to our cyclists in Gibraltar. So in comparison, well, we won't win a Tour de France, that's for sure. But how can we develop? We can develop by racing in Morocco, as they used to 30 years ago. And it's only through constant racing that you improve. You cannot race every 2 years because you're not used to the nerves, you're not used to the tactics, you're not used to even the kind of training that you realize after a race that you should have had done. Those are things that come with experience through racing. That is how my comparison with Slovenian cyclists is. They are only better because of Italy. We hope to be better because of Morocco. And that
Inshallah,
is
as we say here.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
We have Nancy from London. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us. Says, Mr. Chris, can you advise on this questions based on your experience? How can I reach Morocco carrying my bicycle? Which documents will I need in order to cycle in Morocco? And which are the most beautiful areas in Morocco by bicycle? Well, I don't think you'll be able to answer most of those questions, but
no, I can answer one of them, which is how you can carry a bicycle, and is that incredibly, airlines, even though they make life difficult for you to carry a suitcase and carry hand luggage, and they charge you for everything, they actually charge very little to carry a bicycle on a plane.
Wow.
Yeah, comparatively wise, it's actually cheap to carry. All I recommend is if you are going to cycle and put your bicycle in a plane, is that you buy a decent bicycle bag, and they sell. There's online you can buy from anywhere nowadays a decent bicycle bag. There's also other options, and there are some incredible bike manufacturers who have foldable bikes that are absolutely wonderful. There's one of our ministers, Mr. Paul Valvan, is seen cycling around Gibraltar regularly on one of, I don't want to say the brand of the bicycle because it'll be unfair, but he has a bicycle that folds in such a way that it can actually convert into a shopping trolley.
You know, it's interesting that you should mention that, but I remember attending a charity gala dinner organized pre-COVID by Suyen Perez, Suyen Catania, for the Heart Foundation in Gibraltar, and the minister attended. And he turned up in his bicycle, folded it away, and after the event, re-unfolded his bicycle, and off he went on his bicycle.
Yeah, it's great to see. I know that Stuart from the e-bike shop, he has the same bike and I was told that he carried it as hand luggage in a trip to the UK. I don't know how true it is, but I believe it, that he carried it as hand luggage instead of having to carry a big bike.
We have Fernando from Gibraltar. Thank you for joining us, Fernando. Mr. Chris, cyclists ought to have compulsory training, number plates and insurance, shouldn't they? How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about that? In Gibraltar, we have there are currently 3 major cycling clubs. These clubs, they're called UCM, PEB, and Gibraltar Cycling Club, GCC. They cater for about 250 cyclists, more or less, and all of them are insured.
Excellent.
Because I belong to one of them, and I am insured. Now, we're insured freely because we voluntarily pay for that insurance. It's not a regulation. It isn't a regulation either in Spain. It's not the law to have insurance. Do I believe that we should have insurance? Absolutely. I had an accident in December in Spain, nearby Spain, and when I had to deal with the Spanish police, and when I took up my insurance, they laughed. They said they'd never met a cyclist with insurance.
With insurance,
yeah. And yeah, but the thing is that if you have an accident and if you carry your insurance, it helps a lot to ease tensions. Yes. Because the car believes that he's right and he has damage and he thinks he's never going to get paid. And it gives me for me, it's a comfort to know that I have an insurance that doesn't cost me that much. I think I pay £25 a year with the club.
Wow.
To have that insurance. So should we have insurance? I believe it is, but you don't have to because it's not the law. Number plates, no, I don't think it's necessary to have a number plate because it'd be very difficult to have a plate attached to the bicycle that's visible to anybody. And how, nowadays we're trying to wear a lot of tight gear to go faster. If we have a number plate, it'll just make us go slower.
Slow you down. Yeah, we have Manuel from Gibraltar joining us. Thank you, Manuel, for tuning in and asking. He says, thanks, Chris, for sharing your experience. What are the positive effects of cycling and what care should be taken while cycling?
Well, the positive effects of cycling, as well as mentally and physically, are incredible. There was a study, it's nothing to do with cycling, but with swimming, but you can take it similarly. There was a study that I read about how if you take up swimming at the age of 15 to the age of, say, 20 and give up swimming for the rest of your life, never do any other exercise, you will still benefit to the day you die from those 5 years of exercise.
Wow.
And that was a study that was done. The benefits of anything are huge. Cycling, for me, as I have it, for me, even at the age of 57, I feel like a kid when I'm cycling. Mentally, it just clears my mind. It's incredible how much rubbish you think about when you're cycling on your own. But when you come back, you feel so refreshed because you seem to, like the sweat, you take out all the rubbish out of your mind. So you feel great when you come back.
It's like clearing the wardrobes and rearranging all your clothes.
Absolutely. Not only that, but the rest of the day you feel relaxed. So there are huge benefits. Definitely the health benefits. How do you go about safe cycling? Never trust any person in a car. As far as I'm concerned, in the UK, yes, they call that defensive cycling or defensive biking, because I used to ride bikes a lot before, motorcycles, I mean, and it's called defensive cycling. And it's just make sure that they see you. Don't take it for granted. When you reach junctions, make sure they're looking at you, and never take anybody in a car for granted. Never think they're good drivers. Always think they're bad drivers, and that makes you go in a safer way and a more protective way around people like that. And always respect the traffic signs. It's important to do that.
We'll come back to that once I read. We have Sandra from Amsterdam. Wow, all the way from Amsterdam. Thank you, Sandra, for joining us. And she says, I had a beautiful experience cycling in Morocco, and I would like to share it. So what to expect. A very diverse and attractive destination, desert, mountains, coast, and in the northern part of the country, even extensive forests, lovely country, roads, but also very busy stretches. So thank you, Sandra, for sharing that with us. And, on the question of traffic signs, Chris, I just wanted to add that the Royal Gibraltar Police has been actually giving ROSPA's cycling proficiency courses all the way back from the late 70s. And I know that to date, they still do that. And this is done through the schools in Gibraltar. And it's a 7-week course. And at the end of the course, they're examined. And if they're successful, they're given a certificate and a badge. And it's creating awareness on road signs, what they mean, how to stop at a junction, road signals, the whole shebang of how to be safe on the roads. And this is something that the Royal Gibraltar Police has been doing now for many, many, many years, and I know that they continue to do so. It's one of the things that our children in schools in Gibraltar have the opportunity of doing this.
Yeah, the biggest danger that I find in traffic is that people are always in a rush to get somewhere, even though it's nowhere really. Sometimes it's just a rush to get home. And that is where the danger lies. In Gibraltar, we cannot have cycling lanes like they have in other parts of the world, but we can have areas that can be designated overtaking lanes. So say for about 100 meters or 200 meters, so that I can safely pull to the right and let those cars through so they don't feel frustrated. And I don't feel that pressure and that danger in vehicles. I have 3 bicycles. I have one that was given back to me after 30 years by another of your colleagues, actually, Brian Regis.
Yeah, he's an avid cyclist.
Yeah, well, he gave back to me a bicycle that I sold to him 30 years ago, and actually have it hanging back in the garage. But I have 3 bicycles. I have one for when I want to go on the road a bit faster. One that's called a gravel bike or an adventure bike, which is to go slightly off-road. And I've got one that I use in Gib to do everything because it's so quick to do everything in Gib. The problem lies in that you can't, you see, at least I'm fairly strong on a bicycle. So when I come to junctions on hills, and Gibraltar, that's what we have, junctions and hills. I can cope with a junction and hill because I have the strength or fitness because I train to be able to control that. Now, how can you ask a family with young kids to cycle on these roads safely, come to a junction on a hill, stop, carry on with all the pressure of all the cars coming through? The peak times in Gibraltar, traffic is chock-a-block.
Challenging.
It's very challenging. So we've suggested other ways of going around different routes. For example, that dockyard. Surely we can fit a cycling lane through our dockyard that ends up at Newmore House. Surely it cannot be that difficult to have a 1-meter lane inside that dockyard. At the end of the day, it's a commercial dockyard. It's not a military base anymore, and I'm sure we could help children to cycle in a safer environment. So that is the other aspect of the Cycling Association. And the other question was, I wish we could be Slovenia and bring out a world champion by participating in Morocco. And I would love it to see a group of 8 men and women cyclists take part in events in Morocco. And mountain biking, because obviously it's mountain biking heaven in Morocco.
Yeah. Oh, we have Rita from Paris. Gosh, we've gone international today. That says, many thanks, Mr. Chris. You are inspiring the young people. My experience cycling in Morocco. Morocco is simple as this. People are generally friendly and like to talk. Say hi to villagers when you pass through in the Rif Mountains. Atlas Mountains and desert. But watch out with the kids sometimes on the roads. They are happy to see people on bikes, especially in some remote areas, and want to shake hands, but would still be in the middle of the road. So thank you very much, Rita from Paris, for that advice for one of your future um, adventures in Morocco. Chris, uh, it's been an amazing pleasure having you. Unless there's anything else you want to add, we're going to wrap it up because we have been talking for nearly an hour now.
Yeah, all I want to say is that I'm extremely grateful for the opportunities given. I think we're going to be successful in being able to compete in Morocco in the north. I believe there's a league called the Northwest League, and if we can compete there, you know, it doesn't have to be on a weekly basis because people work. We are amateurs.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we have to accept that people have a life and
Yes.
children and etc. etc. So at least if we could compete, say 6, 8 times, 10 times a year, it's 6 or 8 to 10 times a year more than they're doing now.
Absolutely.
And the level, I can only assume that the level is going to be higher than ours, which is what I want. We want to be beaten.
Don't always
we
assume.
Want to,
don't always
yeah,
assume that what we do in Little Gibraltar is any less than what happens in other parts of the world.
But you don't want to go to a place and win. You don't progress like that. You want to go to a place and lose.
True. At least the
That's
first
what
time.
competition does to you. It'll make you
It
train
makes you
harder.
better.
It makes you better. So
it makes you better.
You don't want to get slaughtered either. but at least so that you have something to aim for. So that is, I'm really grateful. I know that they will allow us. And, you know, your association and the people you work with are fantastic. They're very friendly. And I just hope that we can achieve that. We can see some cyclists from Gibraltar participating in all types of events there.
Inshallah, God willing, Chris. It's amazing the amount of work that happens behind the scenes here. I'm witnessing it firsthand because of the country being closed. There's no way of getting back at the moment, and I visited the office quite often. As you know, I'm retired. This I do out of the goodness of my heart and to foster the cultural exchange because I love Gibraltar, I love Morocco, and anything that I can do to foster that, I'm just very happy to do it. Chris, what an absolute pleasure to have had you as my guest this evening. Look forward to catching up when I get back to Gibraltar and say thank you once again. And thank you all for having joined us in our cultural exchange. It has been a great pleasure to host you tonight, live from the Casbah in Tangier, bringing our cultures closer together. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, good night and stay safe.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Chris.